Fear Street book, Missing, published May 1st, 1990, is the first book to threaten the authority structure, the protagonist's parents, as opposed to finding a contrived reason to center teenage protagonists who can't turn to the authority structure. It's also the first book to feature protagonists living on Fear Street. Up to this point, Fear Street and associated fear settings have been treated as something off in the distance that you can go to, encounter danger, and then retreat to your house and hope that something doesn't follow you home. While still treated as an outlandishly dangerous foreign setting, Missing removes the element of the safe home. The instant that the Burrows move to Shadyside, they're in dangerous territory and have nowhere to retreat. It's like the town may be Transylvania, but the Burrows have taken up residence in Dracula's castle. Kara, a blonde teenage girl, fits in pretty well at Shadyside High and befriends Lisa and Shannon from other books, while her archery enthusiast brother Mark soon starts dating a girl named Gina, a pretty girl with pale skin and dark eyes and hair. Yep, definitely a vampire. You can tell that Stine didn't move around a lot as a kid. This ability to immediately ingratiate yourself with the school population is a trait only shared with space aliens and Bella Swan. Both Fear Street and Goosebumps share this contrivance. Their parents disapprove of Gina for no reason, the father being framed as especially strict for worrying that it will distract Mark from school. Kara can't see the problem because Mark averages a B. Well, maybe the reason they dislike her so much is because she's hot. Seriously, Kara's description of her contains the word sexy, or a synonym, no less than 4 times, including once to confirm that Gina is sexy, according to Kara's analysis, as opposed to the more subjective male interpretation of beauty. It really makes her look into Gina herself, which I don't think was what Stine was going for. I suspect that the original draft of the book had Mark as the viewpoint character for the beginning, and then Stine decided to make Kara more prominent and switch perspectives in the first few chapters, and very sloppily edited it. Now it looks like Kara has an incestuous obsession with her brother by describing him in extreme detail, while leaving herself undescribed, at least until later, and is into his girlfriend, gawking at how hot she is and how hot it is when she and Mark make out. It feels like Kara should be the villain of the book as an unhinged stalker. They come home from school one day and find their parents out, so they decide to throw a party. What? Yeah, we know that their parents are gonna be gone a long while, but they don't know that. I swear, a toddler has more empathy than Stine does. A police officer named Captain Faraday comes to the door, and Kara knows that he's come to announce that something horrible has happened to their parents. Except he's not. He's spreading word of local burglaries. Why would Kara think that something happened to their parents? Unless she's clairvoyant, it makes no sense for her to guess the book's premise. Why not presume it's a noise complaint about the party? Damn it, Stine. Faraday gives her his card. She comes back in to find Corey and his friend David trying to pull a prank with some rubber vomit, showing that it's not just younger kids that Stine thinks are constantly pulling stupid pranks on each other. What, can he not think of anything else they could do with their time? Mark quickly ends the party, fearing that their parents will be home soon. Kara can't see the problem because their parents are always out extremely late these days for their job installing computers in Cranford Industries, an airplane part manufacturing company 2 towns away. Well, then why was she convinced that something had happened to them a moment ago? However, it turns out that the phone lines are out, meaning that they could have tried and didn't, worrying both of them. Okay, yeah, mildly distressing. Only now are we introduced to Roger, a distant cousin renting out their attic while attending a nearby college. It seems that their parents make a habit of renting out rooms to college students. Roger asks if their parents are back yet, and is alarmed when he finds out that they're not. Grows increasingly worried when he learns of the inactive phone line, and frantically badgers them about looking for a note. But they just can't see what the big deal is. I mean, they're always out late. Come on, Roger? Yeah. Really, Stine? Really? And despite not caring about it when talking to Roger, Kara starts to get worried and is upset that Mark just wants to watch a rerun of Star Trek because suddenly he couldn't care less. And then Stine totally confuses details of Star Trek. It's emphasized that this is a Next Generation episode, and then the episode described is the Gamesters of Triskelion from the original series. And he misspells the word thrall as thrill, as Kara both indicates that she knows the episode and claims to not be into Star Trek. Yeah. I'm guessing Stine knows nothing about Star Trek, but figured that kids of 1990 were into Star Trek The Next Generation, found a Star Trek episode summary in a TV guide, didn't bother to verify that it was, in fact, from The Next Generation, and then he, his editor, or the editor of TV Guide, thought that thrall was a misspelling of thrill and just changed it without checking, which is actually in theme with Star Trek's own production problems. There's a pointless end-of-chapter scare as Kara checks out their parents' bedroom and is scared by bedsheets. No, really. Then there's another scare as she spots a burglar in the room. No, wait, it's Roger. Lurking around in a creepy way, sure, but Roger. A little heavy-handed with the end-of-chapter scares there, huh? Roger claims to have been looking for his Walkman, but he was looking a little hard in a weird place. Then Kara finds something legitimately creepy, a monkey skull in their parents' bed. Wow, now there's a fetish even weird for the internet age. Monkeys and their parts are a horror trope associated with the dangers of the non-Western world, hinting at both crime and otherworldly mysticism. We see this in the evil wish-granting paw in The Monkey's Paw by W. W. Jacobs, the evil spirit of depression in Green Tea by Sheridan Le Fanu, and the Nazi-allied monkey in Indiana Jones. It's derivative of when the British Empire was colonizing India and afraid of its culture. It's a little artifact of xenophobia. They go to bed. A shift in perspective to Mark shows no change in the portrayal of Gina as this super sexy girl he can't stop thinking about, which actually makes sense when it's from his perspective. However, Stine isn't a good enough writer to actually sell her as particularly sexy, and just keeps repeating the word sexy and various synonyms. Hot, nice bod, etc. We get that he's into her. You want to show us what he cares about? Is it her legs, her walk, her attitude? Stine is trying to add this erotic component, but there's hardly anything there. Unable to sleep, Mark is drawn to the window by the howl of Fear Street wolves. And he notices a gray van parked across the street, and sees Roger run across the lawn and climb inside. He tries to take the opportunity to snoop in Roger's room, but Roger comes back before he can, and lies about having gone for a walk. The next day, their parents are still gone. Kara is worried, but Mark isn't, because why be consistent? He fills her in on Roger's weirdness. They go to the attic to confront him, but find him out, so they take the opportunity to snoop through his things. Kara notices that his textbooks and notepads seem unused, like it's all for show, and he isn't really taking classes. And then she finds a pistol in his underwear drawer. She pulls it out, and there's a perspective shift to Kara, freaking out because Mark pulled it out. Ah, really, Stine? Despite being completely ignorant about guns, Mark determines it's loaded. He puts it back, and Kara runs across the lawn to their next-door neighbor to use her phone to call their parents. She tries their direct line at Cranford, but no one answers. She calls the phone company to let them know about the outage, and they say that no one else reported an outage. Strange. She goes home, and she and Mark discuss going to Cranford, but discover that their parents' car is still in the garage. Like maybe something happened to them before they left for work. They take the car and run across the gray van. Mark tries to talk to the driver, but he plays dumb and pretends he hasn't heard of Roger. The driver is also a creepy pale guy who resembles an albino, so Stine plays into harmful stereotypes too. Not having previously seen the driver, it's weird that Mark assumes that this gray van is the same gray van that Roger ran into, but he's right for no good reason. They continue on to Cranford, a huge building with a fence and armed guard. Not your typical workplace. They talk the guard into letting them in, and they're escorted to a lobby where a busy receptionist ignores them for a while. But it's okay because Kara sees their parents. Oh no, wait, it's not them. Yeah. As if fake-out scares aren't bad enough, now we have fake-out good endings. The receptionist finally gets to them, but can't find their parents' listings in the company. She calls some people, and the CEO, Mr. Marcus, gets involved and determines that their parents never worked for them. As if that isn't devastating enough, Gina breaks up with Mark! I mean, that's how the book frames it. But Gina's one personality trait is being sexy, so it's less of a shocking moment and more of a shrugging moment. Left with no further leads, and the phone's now working, they decide to call the police, thereby making them smarter than most of these protagonists. However, Kara decides to phone Captain Faraday directly. He reassures them that nothing bad has happened and promises to get some patrolmen on it. When they hang up, they hear Roger listening in on the extension. They confront him, but he denies spying on them. They ask about the gun, and he tells a story about it belonging to his father, who was a cop and gave it to him before being killed in a drug raid. This is framed as suspicious. It probably didn't happen, but it's worth examining as an excuse. The cop father is supposed to lend Roger legitimacy as a gun owner, and the tragic story about being killed in a drug raid implies a nobility in defending society conferred onto his son. This framing presumes the legitimacy of the endlessly problematic so-called war on drugs, conducted by the US government, largely discriminating against people of color, mostly black or Latino. This fit into a contemporary rise in policing as a response to a perceived racialized threat to white America. Roger's father is supposed to be legitimized through dying defending white America from a violent element associated with people of color, when he himself would also be a victim of the same war on drugs, compelling him to give his life for no good reason. Roger leaves, and Kara follows him to a coffee shop, where he meets with the van driver. He catches her snooping and introduces the man as Dr. Murdoch, his faculty advisor. She plays along, but knows that he's lying. She heads home and is intercepted by Captain Faraday. She fills him in on their suspicions about Roger, and tells him about the monkey skull, but he says he doesn't know anything about it, and leaves her at their house. She goes to hide Roger's gun from him, but finds it gone. Dun dun dun. Yeah, let's totally ignore the obvious presumption that Roger moved it to keep the kids from messing with it. Meanwhile, Mark gets a call from Gina, who tries to tell him something important, but gets cut off and the line goes dead. Mark runs out of the house to meet her. He takes a shortcut through the woods, but gets turned around and falls into a pit. He calls for help and is attacked by a huge dog, apparently trained to attack as part of a trap. In a fight for survival, he fights the beast and manages to kill it. It's an honestly well-written horror scene, though without the emotional depth of, say, Stephen King's Cujo. There's no empathy for the dog, just a tense fight leading to a reverse Nietzsche. Attached to the dog's collar is another monkey skull. He makes it to Gina's place. After injuring himself in an attempt to climb a trellis into her window, he manages it the second time and crawls inside. Gina isn't there, and everything looks bizarrely tidy, like it's a fake room set up by Mr. Monk. This doesn't lead to anything, but it's a nice off-putting element. He borrows a sock for a makeshift bandage, and discovers another monkey skull. He has the sudden thought that each monkey skull is the same one, magically stalking him, but then realizes that it's different skulls and he's just being paranoid. Yeah, this is what passes for a supernatural fake-out in this book. We're 5 books in, and nothing supernatural has happened yet in this series marketed as about supernatural horror. He pockets the skull as her father bursts in, a terrifying burly figure with a gun, but it turns out he's a really nice guy who was just acting intimidating because he thought that Mark was a burglar, which he is. Mark forgets about the concerning phone call and walks home. The next day, the siblings discuss what they know and decide to call Faraday again, only to find that the line is out again. Suddenly remembering their parents' work friend Wally in the next town, they go to meet him and learn that he knows nothing but has a phone number for them from a Cranford Industries directory. They try the number and get nothing, but muse that Mr. Marcus lied to them about their parents not working there. Now, why would he do that? They decide to call Faraday when they get home. However, they arrive to find Roger dead, arrows in his body, and Faraday comes in to accuse Mark of murder. Mark freaks out. Then Murdoch bursts in with a gun in his hand and Faraday shoots him dead. He calls it in using the phone, not a radio, and when Mark goes to the kitchen for a drink of water, he sees that the phone line is still dead, meaning that Faraday lied about calling it in. Mark tries to play it cool, but when he sees Kara telling Faraday everything they know, he bull rushes the man. They wrestle, but Faraday holds the gun on him. In the moment of tension with Kara asking him questions, he shares that he's an ex-cop and that the gun is Roger's, which is a remarkably good use of exposition. Lots of media go way overboard in having the villain info dump their intentions, which is such a cliche that making fun of it is becoming a cliche in itself. But Stine, for all his generally lazy writing, nails this bit of exposition as limited and tied into the emotion of the scene. Yeah, good job. Faraday decides to kill Mark, but at the last second, Gina comes to his rescue, showing up with a hunting rifle. She fires a warning shot and gets Faraday to drop his gun. Turns out, her father has taken her on hunting trips for years. Something not set up at all, except with the note that their father is athletic and they live by the woods. Yeah, could have set that up better, Stine. Holding Faraday at gunpoint, they lock him in the garage. Gina then leads them through the freezing woods to her house, where they borrow some cultist robes and infiltrate a cult meeting. Yeah, there's a cult. It's called the Brotherhood of the White Monkey. Gina's father is a member. They wear dark robes, hold candles, and wear monkey masks that look like the skulls. Mr. Marcus is their leader. He makes a speech about their plan to take over the American government because it's overrun by criminals. I think this is a reference to Iran-Contra, which would have been topical at the time. Though, given Stine being extremely out of touch with modern pop culture, it could also be about Watergate. Mr. Marcus brings out their parents as sacrifices, declaring them traitors. He prepares to stab their father. Mark lobs the monkey skull at his face. He misses, but it's enough to cause a distraction that their parents can use. Their father wrestles a gun away from a cultist, holds it on Marcus, and declares, "You're all under arrest, FBI." Yeah, it turns out their parents are undercover federal agents. That's why they move around a lot. Roger and Murdoch are agents too. Faraday is a crooked cop who the parents put in prison, but got out on good behavior, and came to kill them for revenge. He was either that or join the police force one town over, as often happens with violent cops. They didn't want Mark seeing Gina because they knew her family was part of the cult. Gina's father apologizes and says that he understands he needs to go to prison, but his heart was in the right place, because he joined the Brotherhood to fight crime that the government wasn't adequately policing. But he now realizes that the Brotherhood is as bad as the people he opposed. Having seen Gina fighting the criminals, Mark's father realizes that she's a good seed after all. She leaves Shadyside to go to her mother's place in Detroit, but leaves Mark with a gift, a monkey skull with a note that gives her address and the message, "I love you." He leaves with his family for the next FBI assignment, but knows that he'll never forget his time on Fear Street. And so Missing concludes. Stine actually goes for a theme in this one. Agents of the law versus criminals, and the problems that arise when civilians take up the role of law enforcement. There are a lot of guns in this book. The cultural context of this is the 1989 Central Park jogger case, in which a white woman was the victim of a brutal assault, and police cracked down on unrelated people of color. Wannabe fascist dictator Donald Trump sparked a fervor calling for a return of the death penalty for murder and revitalization of police overreach, leading white America to panic about the perception of rampant lawlessness, prompting massive police overfunding to crack down on kids walking while black. Stine plays right into Trump's tiny hands by emphasizing law enforcement as heroic protectors of society, implying that prison sentences are too soft, portraying crooked cops as specific bad apples, as opposed to it being a systemic problem, and implying that Roger's made-up cop dad was a heroic white guy gunned down by evil people of color, without showing any cynicism toward the war on drugs. It all has the air of fascist propaganda. That said, there is a bit of nuance where the Brotherhood's opposition to criminality extends to corruption in government, seemingly acknowledging problems related to, I think, Iran-Contra. Stine will acknowledge that the American government has problems. In a way, it's not dissimilar to the centrist politics of 2021's The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, just with more of a focus on respecting police. Yeah, I know it's a simple little pulp novel, but if Stine wants to wade into a political theme, I'm gonna give a nuanced response. Politics aside, the book is sloppily written even for Stine. The beginning is supposed to introduce Kara, but it was clearly hastily edited away from Mark's POV. She doesn't get a proper description until halfway through the book when she compares herself to Lisa. The way Mark and Kara flip-flop between caring or not caring about their parents being gone is sloppy when it could have easily been written as them consistently caring and building tension as they worry about what to do. Roger should have been introduced much earlier on. The Star Trek thing is just surreal. To borrow a phrase from Ryan North, Stine has a serious case of old man-itis. He makes a Twilight Zone reference just fine later on, because that's more his era. If he wanted to make a modern 1990 pop culture reference, he should have consulted someone who actually watched Star Trek. The first half of the book is pretty much just junk. You could reasonably toss it without losing anything. However, the second half is compelling. The Cold is genuinely fun, playing up this goofy old pulp horror trope for all it's worth. For R.L. Stine, he actually delivers some truly gripping horror content, especially with the vicious dog. Mark killing it in a fight for his life is startlingly not milquetoast. A gruesome element more in common with that dead cat in New Girl. I'm guessing he found a compromise with his publisher where he could have these horrific depictions of slain animals as long as they're killed in self-defense, not just animal abuse. At the end, Gina comes close to being a good use of a female character, but it feels completely unearned. Mark and Kara call her sexy a million times, but she has zero characterization until she barrels in with a hunting rifle. This could reasonably be set up with her complaining about her father taking her on father-daughter camping trips all the time, with things like fishing and hunting being things that she mentions doing a lot, but you wouldn't consider important until she comes in with a hunting rifle and you remember. Mark could even think about how sexy it is that she's so athletic and knows about these traditionally masculine activities, giving them something to talk about. But there's nothing like that. I'm all for these competent female characters being driven and helping to save the day, but Stine really just wrote the twist to a character he didn't write. Missing is reasonably fun and has some decent horror, but it's full of problems. It's probably not going to end on anyone's top Fear Street book lists. The New Girl and the Overnight cover similar material, and they do it better, so I'd sooner reread one of those. Next time, a paranoid teenager accuses an elderly neighbor of being a witch in The Sleepwalker.